Today I'm going to be demonstrating how easy it is to get IBM Integration Bus and IBM App Connect to work in tandem with one another using a simple automated pattern. Now today I'm going to be running Integration Bus in a Docker container inside the Bluemix container service. And as you can see in the Open Administration page, my container details include an IP address for that container and a couple of open ports for IB. If you want more info on getting this up and running, then we've got some great earlier blog entries that. But for the moment, we're going to move swiftly on and switch to my toolkit, where you can see that I already have a link defined to that same integration node defined on the same IP address that we were looking at a moment ago here in the bottom left corner. That means that I can easily deploy to that node in a few minutes' time. At the top here in my Patterns Explorer, I have a pattern named the IB to App Connect integration pattern, and this basically shows with a picture here how the two products interact. App Connect typically talks to these kind of applications on the right here, which are SaaS-based, cloud-based applications such as Eventbrite, MailChimp, etc. And in App Connect, you create a flow which has a source and a target. Basically, has two applications talking to one another. And we're today going to be publishing events here from IBM Integration Bus as that source application, which sends those trigger messages into IBM App Connect. Now, typically, Integration Bus is used to talk to systems of record. You see some examples here on the left. And so really this is a win-win situation for both products. We're extending the reach of App Connect back into the enterprise, and we're extending IB out to talk to those SaaS-based applications running out on the cloud much more easily. You'll notice here I've got a couple of boxes referring to a secure gateway, and we don't need to worry about those today because we've got IB deployed out to the cloud inside that container service. Right, so let's get cracking and create an instance of this pattern, which I'll give the very inventive title of example. And on creation, you're going to see two categories of properties, general and a trigger one. The general parameters start with an overall title and description for the App Connect interface. We're going to stick with these defaults, which will ultimately appear at the top of the YAML file, which we're going to use to describe the interface to App Connect. Just beneath that, we have the option to select either HTTP or HTTPS, and we're actually going to stick with the default of HTTP to avoid setting up a public key infrastructure, but more typically you might go with HTTPS there. In the hostname field, I'm going to fill out here the same hostname for the IP address for the Docker container that I was referring to earlier, and we're going to stick with the default HTTP port of 7800. The webhook URL fragment we'll leave with the default. And now the interesting part, I'm going to set a number of events or triggers. And basically here you can see I can choose a number from the drop-down entry, and beneath that you'll end up with a number of property groupings based on the selection. And we only need one trigger event in this example, and we are going to give that a name. In this very simple scenario, we'll describe a new stock event. So this is what's actually going out from Integration Bus into App Connect. So when new stock arrives, in this fictitious scenario, we will send a new stock event into App Connect. In addition to the description there, which will ultimately appear within the App Connect UI, I also need to add some fields. So these fields are going to describe my new stock event. I'm going to choose a shirt, and then maybe because I'm British, I'll choose trousers, and then I'll get even more British and finally add a jumper. And those three fields will carry the number of stock items that have arrived as part of this new stock event. So just while we wait for the pattern instance to be generated, I'll describe what we're configuring here. The pattern is going to create a flow which will receive data, map it, and then send event notifications to App Connect. And all of the webhook communications with App Connect, they're going to be handled by an App Connect node in the flow, which is an example of a subflow user-defined node, which has just a few very simple properties. And that node is going to be responsible for sending out events and also registering subscriptions. So now the generation is complete, and you'll see in the top left corner here I have an example application that's been generated, and inside of that I have a message flow which we're going to have a quick look around. This is the IB to App Connect message flow there. So if I open him up, then we will look at what happens when that XML message arrives at the input. We have an HTTP input node to kick things off. That HTTP input node, I'll just navigate while I'm here just to my palette here. You'll notice that there's an app connect user-defined node there that we were referring to, and that appears later in the flow. So there's the beginning of the flow. The HTTP input node has a path suffix for its URL. That's where we're going to be sending some data in due course. And on the input message parsing tab, we're set up to receive XML messages, and they're defined and then mapped using the next node. And ultimately, the flow arrives at this app connect node, which has been pre-configured with the new stock event that we put down in the pattern properties earlier on, and also those webhook URL fragments there as well. Focusing on the map, if I just open that up here, you'll see on the left-hand side I have a source defined using an XML schema, and on the right I have a JSON target defined using a JSON schema. Both of them contain those three very simple fields. Because I've got pretty much the same data on each side named the same, I can use this auto map feature to very quickly create move transforms to map each of the individual fields from left to right. So a very simple example there of creating a mapping. I'm sure you can come up with something more complex, but it will suit our purposes just to demonstrate a little bit of transformation within the flow. By dragging and dropping the application down there onto my integration server runtime, I can execute my deployment, and now we have that flow deployed within the application, ready to do some business with App Connect. So there's one other thing that we should explore while we're in the toolkit here, and that is the interface definition that ultimately describes how IB and App Connect communicate with one another. I'm just going to clear down some of the files here and open up with a text editor the YAML file that describes that interface. And you'll see some familiar properties inside here. So we've got the title and description that were first supplied with our pattern, then also the host and the port number, bearing in mind the container that we deployed IB to, and then underneath that we have the HTTP schemes selection as well. The really interesting thing here actually appears a bit further down. So if I just highlight here, you'll notice there are several different events being coordinated by this file. And we've got the ability to register subscriptions, list out subscriptions, and remove subscriptions. And then ultimately, we've also got defined a new stock event. And in each one of these cases, it relates to URLs and HTTP lower down inside the YAML document, and ultimately definitions as well, such as this one here, definitions for the new stock events that we can explore. So that is the interface. And that interface is going to be used here in our IBM App Connect UI. Typically from that dashboard I would create a flow, but before we do that today we're going to switch to the Applications tab in the top right here, and you can see listed out all of the packaged applications that come as part of the main App Connect product. And if I scroll down here, I've got the option to add my own application, and this is really where that YAML document interface is going to come into its own. And we're actually going to provide that interface to App Connect so that it knows all about the IRB deployment that we've just made to the IRB runtime. So what I'm going to do here is just switch back into my integration bus toolkit, and if I look at the properties of my YAML file, I can locate that easily on the file system, and I'm just going to copy that location there and paste that into my Windows Explorer. Then I'll be able to use that in order to drag and drop into the Web User Interface tab where I'm defining that YAML document into App Connect. So just minimizing those toolings, here we go. So I'm going to drag and drop my YAML file with all that good information about how the two map together into the big panel there, and then fill out the rest of the properties on this sheet. So I'm going to provide an application name, which is used to display my application in the App Connect UI. I'm going to call this IBM Integration Bus. Again, no rewards there for inventiveness. And a description of Ben Thompson's IBM Integration Bus application. So this is, if you like, a user-defined application. Those are options there to provide network connectivity if we need to do that. We're just deploying this out onto the big bad web, so we don't know about that one. Everything can see each other. So here we are. If I just do a refresh on the page here, then we should see that application appear. With a bit of luck, yep, there we see it. IBM Integration Bus just beneath the built-in ones. They're always placed at the bottom there, and you can see that the new stock event trigger is defined within my application. So having defined that application, we can then use that in the process of creating a standard App Connect flow. So if I switch back to my dashboard, I can click the button here to create a new flow. I'm going to provide a flow name as well to identify the flow that we're going to create. And this particular flow is obviously going to take input from IIB, and that's going to go to App Connect. And then I think in this particular showcase I will push that out to an email. So I'm going to go to Gmail to use the Gmail connector that's provided with App Connect. So that's the name. I've obviously got IBM Integration Bus New Stock Event there. I'll select that as my trigger, and then the action for the flow that I'm going to provide is going to be a Gmail action of creating a message. You can see I've already got my Gmail credentials in here from earlier experiences with App Connect, and I'm going to supply some parameters here for the Gmail message which is going to be sent. First of all, I have to select who Gmail will send the email to. I'm going to use a mailinator.com address just to avoid showing you my inbox, spare you all of that red. And I've got a subject of new stock arriving. And then here I get the opportunity to specify a body for the email message. And here I'm going to say that my stock is going to consist of the values that have come in. So I've got a hash shirt, so I've got a number for the entry coming in the shirt parameter. And that's going to be used to describe the number of shirts. So I'll put, if I can type correctly, no mistake, sorry, shirts in there, and then I'm next going to list out the number of trousers that I have coming in. So the hashtag here is just to refer to the field coming from the input application, and I can use that along with static text here to appear inside the email body. So that's just going to take those three and add them in text. If I exit and switch on, then hopefully that will all have worked. Yes, perfect. You can see the message flow there, and it's now in its on state. If I switch my tab across here to Mailinator, you can see that at the moment my inbox is currently empty, just to prove that we have no smoke and mirrors. And if I return back to my Integration Bus Toolkit, then you can see here I've got my app deployed that we saw a moment ago. This time I'm going to go to my message flow, and I'm going to click the Flow Exerciser button up here, and that's going to put us into a recording capturing mode, and it will enable me to use the built-in test client that Integration Bus provides. And I'm going to use this to send that HTTP message into the flow the flow is expecting. So in this send message dialog, I can create a new message, and in the freeform text field here, I'm just going to type in the XML structure that we spoke about earlier on, and that was immortalized within the XML schema that came into the toolkit, courtesy of the pattern. So I have a message, and inside that I'm going to have shirt and trousers, and then the last field is of course the British jumper, and I'm going to provide numeric values for each one of these fields. It will simply be mapped across. So I don't know, let's say we have 3 shirts and 2 trousers and 2 jumpers in this particular new stock event. And then if I click send, that will post the XML over HTTP. I can see I've got the response there. That reply message JSON structure, so that's good news. That means that my mapping has worked. If I just switch back to my Mailinator, then I can see that my new stock has arrived a few moments ago, so that's definitely triggered. And brilliant, the mapping worked. My stock consists of 3 shirts, 2 trousers, and 2 jumpers. So that concludes today's demonstration. Just a quick reminder of what we've covered. We've seen a new pattern, creating a link between Integration Bus and IBM App Connect, courtesy of that YAML document to specify the event triggers. And so it remains for me to just say thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.